Well, distinguished judges, I'm very glad to be here to present my teaching plan of this period. Okay, now let's begin. First, I like to present this text during 4 periods. The time allotment is 4 periods. And my teaching content just focused on this. First is the main idea, the content of this text. I like to show my students and check how much they learned about this text, whether they get a general idea or the specific details of this text. And the next part is language points, which including the new words, grammar, sentence structure, about all this. And third part is the writing. I think no matter how easy the essay is, there's something we should learn from this writer. And I think, especially for the college students, especially the non-English majors, their writing skill need to improve quite a lot. So I like to add the writing strategy to each of this essay. And the last, I like to check whether the 4 skills of English learning, that is listening, speaking, reading, and writing, all involved during the 4 periods of teaching. Okay, and the teaching tools. As to the teaching tools, I like to use the multimedia, of course. And the methodology I like to use maybe include the communicative, interactive approach, task-based language teaching, for abbreviations TBLT, and elicitation or audio-video devices. Okay, now let's move to the teaching procedure. This is a focus of my teaching. Now, I like to explain in the detail. My teaching procedure consists of 4 parts. First is approaching the topic. Second is understanding the text. The third is reckoning the theme. And the last part is doing the tasks. Well, let's move to the first one. First is approaching the topic. This is actually a lead-in or warm-up part. I like to adopt the approach of audio-visual approach. Now, as to this essay I just got about the Devil's Man, it's about globalization and about the nationalism. So I like to introduce or just give a very short film clip or news clip about something happened in a typical American company. Because we know America is a kind of a country called mosaic, a culture mosaic. It contains a multicultural there. It's a melting pot. So I like to just choose one of the very typical company in the United States to show the globalization trend in this country. Okay, then I will just work out. This is about focus on the listening of our students. And next, in this part, I like to also involve the speaking part. So I like to work out several activities. Usually in my class, this final part is carried out in the pair work or group discussion or debate. And here I like to just pose some questions just like for students from the easiest one to the maybe complex one. The easy one just like, do you want to study overseas after graduation from university? Do you want to overseas post-graduating experience? I think it's very easy for students to get into our topic easily. And the second, I like to ask, what is the purpose for your study? Since the Premier Joe once said, I'm studying just for the rise of the nation. So what is the purpose for your study if you want to study abroad? How can you serve your own country? Okay, and the third one is, what do you think about globalization? I want the 3 or more questions will be designed to the different levels for students to answer. Okay, now basically that is my first part, the leading part, approaching the topic. Then I will move to the understanding this text. I like to analyze this part in 3 sections. First is global reading. Here I like to say I prefer the discourse analysis rather than the traditional sentence or words-oriented analysis. So from this text is a typical exposition. So I like to, first of all, give this structure of this whole text. Of course, I like to tell my students how many parts should we divide this text, okay? And in the 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, this should be the paragraph part 1, and they also give us explanation of the Devil's Man and what is the globalization. It is introduction part of this essay. And part 2 is from paragraph 4 to paragraph 5, which give us the different voices of the Devil's Man, Devil's Woman, that there, they also give us the two examples. One is from Professor Huntington, and another one is Claus. And the third part is from paragraph 6 to paragraph 9, which is mentioned about the international or the global trade. Okay, there is the different parts here, and one of the subsection is there is a shift in the development of foreign trade. At first period, they just focus on the development among the trade among the developed countries, and now more and more business elite mentioned in this essay, they pay much more attention to the trade from the poor countries, the developing countries to the developed countries. Okay, and the last part, of course, the paragraph 10 is give us a conclusion. Well, that's briefly about this global reading. And for the intensive reading, I like to explain from a lexical and syntactical level. Now here, I noticed that in this book, I like to explain several words. These words have a distinctive feature about word formation. For example, in paragraph 4, line 5, there's a word superspecious. Superman is a very hot topic, a popular topic among students, so they can know super very much. And what does superspecious mean? Super plus specious. They can guess what does the word mean. Then there's another word in paragraph 8, line 3, is a counterpoint. Counter, I can like to express what does this prefix mean, and then plus point, what does this mean? I want to give the elicitation point to the students for them to think about the word formation. I think it's very helpful for them to enlarge their vocabulary, and it's very practical in their English learning. And, well, let's move on to the third part of understanding the text, that is writing strategy I mentioned here. Now, since it's a typical exposition, I like to introduce some figures of how to write exposition. I noticed that in this text, there are a lot of numbers, figures, or the quotations used here. So I like to tell students, if you write a composition preparing for the CET4 or CET6 or entrance examination of postgraduate studies, it is advisable for them to use this kind of writing strategy. Use the numbers, figures, or the sentence structure like according to the statistics, just like this, or it is reported. It will make the essay more convincing and evident. Okay, and the third part I like to mention is reckoning the theme. Okay, just as mentioned, globalization and nationalism are two terms mentioned in this essay. So I like to pose questions just like what I mentioned in this first part of my teaching, that is, what is the purpose for your work? What is the purpose for our study? Okay, and what can you serve the world we are living in? Just like this, to make a further understanding, for students to cultivate a further understanding of this text. The last part is doing tasks. Okay, and first of all, of course, students should fulfill the exercise in their textbooks and about the grammar, the new words, and the sentence structure, and do the translation work. And the second part, I like to give them a lot of questions that I just make for them to have a self-evaluation. Then I like to have a feedback from them, the feedback from the peers. They can discuss with each other how did they learn from this text, and what shall we, for our teachers, what shall we to improve our teaching procedure. Okay, basically that is my teaching plan during the 4 periods. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, here are 2 questions for you to answer.
Okay.
The first is, how do people respond to the national identity and the loyalty in a globalized world?
Well, I like to say this is a kind of hard question for students to answer at first time. So you mean you ask me to ask?
Centering around the text.
Okay. Well, I like to say this is a kind of, actually, it seems that 2 separate topics. Actually, they interconnected with each other. Because we are just living in a world, we need a cooperation from the other side. This is not a world who can just do anything by myself. Cooperation and teamwork is the key words in the current society. No matter what kind of nation or what kind of people he is, she needs the other people's help and assistance. And I think as for a country, it is the same case.
Excuse me, can you go into details?
Well, okay.
Give us some example taken from the text. Tell us the views presented by the author.
Okay. I would like to say they also give us some different voices here in this text, in this essay. And one of them believes that they just confirm their identity. If he born in English, he believes that he's an Englishman. And of course, there are different voices. For example, one of them are born in London and grew up in Chicago, but he still give up his passport of America and become an Englishman. So as to the characters or the person in this essay shown by the author, he's kind of believed that this is a personal choice. This is about the personal choice. You can just choose, and you can believe what you are going to choose.
Well, the second question is about the title, which I think may give rise to some comprehension problem. So could you explain to your students the title that is In Search of the Wolf's Man?
Okay. Actually, I noticed in this essay, the author wants to give us some hint to interpret what does the devil's man mean. Actually, I just keep a note about in paragraph 3, line 2, the author gives us explanation of devil's man. He said, not identically, both are devil's man. And then following this are the explanations. Members of the international business elite who track each other to East Apple and to the founded in 1972. This is the first part. And there's another part to show the author's implication of a devil's man, and that is in whatever their considerable difference, most devil's men, devil's women share at least one belief that globalization is welcome, unstoppable. I think the two places can present it to our students and teach them how to learn a new phrase, a new words in the text. This is another reading strategy. You can, when you meet a word or phrase you don't know, you should go through the context very quickly.
What does in search of mean? In search of. What does it mean? In search of.
In search of.
Yes. You know the title is In Search of the Wolf's Man.
Oh, just now I just explained the meaning of a devil's man.
Yes.
And in search of a devil's man here, I think because just as I mentioned, there are too many different voices, too many different opinions in the world. So the author wants to suggest one way to just help us to figure out what is devil's man. It is improper and it is popular, just like this. And here I think, although they also give us the title In Search of, and actually I think you can just make up your own mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.